Right now on air with me, and I appreciate that very much, is the Kalamazoo County Clerk, Tim Snow. Good morning, Tim. Thanks for coming on. Whoops. Now you can go. Good morning, Tim. Thanks for coming on. You there?
Oh, sure am.
Hey,
Thanks for
appreciate.
having me.
I right before, as you may have heard me say the break, I said you're from Calhoun County. I don't know why, maybe because I'm in Calhoun County, had
It's
my
okay.
brain. That's why I said I either promoted you, demoted you, or one of the, or neither.
Yeah, it's all
Also,
good.
with Tim is Kalamazoo College and Professor Francisco Villegas. Good morning, Professor Villegas. Appreciate you coming on.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You were where's my notes here? How were you involved in this, sir? Oh, you were in the chair of the ID Advisory Board, correct?
I am. I also co-authored the report given to the commissioners about the need for the ID.
All right, great. Two great people to have on air because I spoke about this last Wednesday before Thursday's first day of this, and there were a lot of questions as well as a lot of concerns by myself and others out there. I guess let's just start with a general open question. What was the purpose of having a Kalamazoo County alternative ID as opposed to a state ID?
So this isn't meant to be opposed to an ID. This is more recognition that a lot of people don't have access to the state ID given the way that it's currently structured. This includes the demand for something like a picture ID, and the question becomes, how do you get a picture ID when you don't already have a picture ID? And one of the comments that's come out is whether that makes it less onerous or less difficult to get an ID. But I think part of it for us to recognize is that the demand from the state is not in itself quite as difficult either. They take something like a yearbook photo. Most of us don't look like we did when we were in high school. And so to us was then thinking about the large number of community members within the county that don't have access to an ID for any number of reasons, including a homeless population, including people who are fleeing domestic violence who don't have the option or ability to take their documents, including a large number of the elderly within this county. And so for us, it was thinking about and working with law enforcement about the need for an ID, but also the desire for law enforcement to have people with IDs.
Well, Dr. Villegas, in your list of people, including you didn't mention what is the biggest concern about people is the illegal aliens who are here and giving them ID. Was that never a concern? And are they not allowed to get this ID since you didn't mention them?
No, I have a large number of people that I didn't mention. It's a very large group of people who don't have access to an ID. The undocumented are very much welcome to have the ID. The ID, and I don't understand the concerns about providing identification to an undocumented population because the ID does not provide any kinds of benefits that they're not already legally entitled to have.
Well, I think one of the concerns is that you guys are just saying that well, the state ID is too hard to get because you need a social security number, which all those groups you just said have. You need a U.S. citizenship or legal presence, which all those groups that you had and you didn't mention the one have, and you need to prove residency. Now, maybe the homeless would have an issue with that, because with the county ID, all you need is a high school diploma or a Michigan. Well, you have to get up to certain points, right? High school diploma, a prisoner identification card, which probably already has a picture of you, baptismal records, employment pay stubs, marriage license, Metro Transit IDs, and many others. Why are you making it easier for someone who can't get a state ID to get this county ID? Is where the concern comes. And it could be someone who wants to hide their identity because they're the ones who beat up their wives or vice versa, their girlfriends, and now they want to go and fake a high school diploma, which is much easier than all these other state ID things, to fake any of these documents you guys have. Won't it make it easier for them to hide their identification that way?
Not at all. We have a system that we worked with the county sheriff to vet people's identity. So when somebody does not have a picture ID, we actually demand a lot more documents from them as a means of making sure that they are who they say they are.
And you follow up then, and I did mention this last Wednesday. I remember saying, now, if they follow up on this, there may be a point to it. So you verify each document that they've given you by going back to either in the case of baptismal records, the whatever religious organization they were with, high school diploma, you go back to the high school. Do your employment, you go back to the employer. Is all this background check being performed?
No, nor was it entitled to, nor is it something that the state does.
Well, but then what did you mean by, you said you worked with the sheriff's department in trying to make sure they are who they are, or however you phrased it,
Right.
Professor?
So the methodology of vetting somebody's identity, and what we did with the sheriff was develop a set of criteria that would provide a means of verifying people's identities through a number of different documents that put together would provide us with the sufficient comfort of thinking about this is the person that is who they say they are.
But then, well, okay, we'll leave it at that because
So all those documents get stacked on top of one another. It's not like one document comes in and you get an ID.
No, I understand that. Those people who already have photo ID only need to obtain 300 points.
Right.
So then why would they need a Kalamazoo County ID if they already have a photo ID?
Oh, that's an easier question.
Okay.
I think part of that is not just whether or not they need it, is the ways in which this helps our community here within Kalamazoo. I think the project within the ID is to think about how do we develop a stronger community as a county, and also because we're working with so many local partners, particularly businesses, how do we make sure that we keep local dollars in a local economy with businesses that are helping the community.
And yeah, I found that interesting that there were so many businesses in Kalamazoo County who are offering discounts to only those individuals who have a county ID, even getting involved in this issue at all, because I could see people who live in the county who say, well, I don't want to go through the trouble of going to one place because it's easier to go to a Secretary of State because there's many more of them in Kalamazoo County to get a state ID. It's easier for me to, because I have one, I'm not going to go to this one place where I can get it. And now I don't get the discount, but all these people that have the Kalamazoo ID get the discount. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, part of it was at the beginning we wanted to make sure that with the task force trying to get community support for the ID even before it was approved by the Board of Commissioners, and then certainly after that time, and so that we had so the task force had broad community support, which they did have, and then they continued on and it just sort of developed. I don't know if this was necessarily the initial plan, but it developed in that way. And a lot of these businesses were so excited about participating and being a part of this county ID program that they, I think they just they were asked, and then they were willing to provide an incentive of some kind or another. We also have lots of organizations that have also signed on, and we're getting more of those every day, that they will be using the county ID, which is actually, this is even the more important part, that they will be willing to use the county ID as at least a part of their, if they need to have identification, they will be able to use the county ID as part of that identification to participate in certain programs or with organizations in the county, and that's pretty exciting.
See, the concern I have, and many who called in, many from your area in the Kalamazoo County through my affiliate out there, WKMI, as well as my flagship station here in WBCK in Battle Creek, reaches into the county, is that, as I spoke with Professor Villegas about, these documents are easier to fake. The high school diploma, the baptismal record, employment stubs, and all that. And if we're not doing background checks on it, and now they have access to whatever these programs are you speak of, I don't care about the restaurants and their discounts. I do find it odd that they are discriminating against other Kalamazoo County people who don't have the ID, but I guess that would be on them to do so. It's their reason to do that. Is being able to commit a crime or as I said to the professor, hide your identity, because now you can go get an official government Kalamazoo County ID that is saying that you're Renk instead of Rush, let's say.
Well, there are a number of different. You have to come up with the right points and the right number of documents. And one thing isn't going to do it. Two things may not do it. 3 or 4 things may not do it. It depends on what you've got. If you've got something with your picture on it and your name on it, that's going to give you a extra boost to get you toward that point total. But there are many things that are only 75, 50, and 75 points because we know that they're.
All right, Tim, I'm sorry. Let me put you on hold. I got to go to break. We'll come back on the other side. I want to thank Kalamazoo County Clerk Tim Snow and the Kalamazoo College Professor Francisco Villegas for coming on and talking about the Kalamazoo County ID program. Obviously, Tim's on because he's the county clerk, which started last Thursday, is when you could start getting your ID for $10, a picture ID given by Kalamazoo County government. And Professor Villegas, it was an advisory board member. He was chair of the ID advisory board member. Thanks again, gentlemen, for both coming on air and, taking the questions. And I guess if there's anything more you'd like to add, Tim, to what we were discussing, because we had to go to a break real quickly there at the end. Did you think you got out everything you needed to?
Well, I think I did. I want to emphasize that you had sort of led into a little bit about undocumented folks, and I want Dr. Villegas to talk about that as well. But we were just talking here briefly about if someone was truly undocumented, it would still take them quite some time to obtain the documents that we require to see in order for them to obtain an ID. They would have to definitely establish residency. They would have to start doing things in the area, things in the community, so that their name and address and perhaps photo appear on some documents that we can check before they would ever be able to get enough points to even come close to getting a county ID.
You kind of started then addressing it now because the main beef, and again, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, is how is this just not really an identification program, getting photo ID, official government photo ID for undocumented, like you call them, illegal aliens here. And whether it's good, bad, or ugly, it is certainly something that that people see this program, including myself, as being mainly what it's for. Because, again, I'll go back to why not just go get a state ID, or why doesn't the county make it easier, help people who are homeless or who are elderly? So I guess what you mean by that, they can't get themselves to the Secretary of State's office. Why not just institute a program to help people get state IDs? Dr. Villegas or Clerk Snow, your thoughts?
I think there's a couple of things, and I'll say this anecdotally as someone who was here opening day helping people get their ID and who spent an hour here as well today. Anecdotally, over 50% of the people that I worked with got their ID through their Michigan driver's license. And so that's sort of signaling a certain degree of excitement within the community to get their ID. Another set of a population that I've been working with is people who don't have access to the state ID because they're homeless, because they've been recently released from prison, and some who are undocumented. And I think part of it here for the first two groups, as you said, is that while it may seem that they have access to the state ID, there's a number of different factors that are keeping them from it. When we think about the task force was not just composed of people working on behalf of undocumented migrants. It was composed of people working with the homeless community. It was composed of people working in violence against women shelters. It was composed of a number of different groups who saw a value to the communities that they're servicing. And so I think it's a fallacy to think that the ID is readily available to everyone. at the state level. And I agree with you that there can be changes at the state level to do so, but that's entirely outside of the jurisdiction of the county. And so that the work that's happening within the county level is simply recognizing that we live in a society where you need an ID to pick up your young kids from school, that you need an ID oftentimes to pick up medication, that you need an ID for any number of different things that we tend to take for granted when we have access to one, but that a lot of people don't necessarily. One of the things that came up within the task force was how difficult it can be for somebody who does not have an ID to cash their paycheck. And one of the things that's come up here today with somebody I helped earlier today is somebody who has a paycheck and needs the ID and is homeless. And so I think here we have to think about the many different ways in which people are then experiencing barriers to the state ID. The last thing that I'll say...
Now, if I may, Dr. Villegas, to that point, first of all, how are they getting a job when they're not? No one knows who they are. You can't verify it. That's one quick point. But more importantly, I don't disagree that there's these other groups that you were working with and that may need help. But then answer the question, which was, why not then put in some type of program to help those people get the proper state ID, which has more weight than a county ID?
I mean, look, if you've got an easy way to go about making the state ID accessible to everybody, I'm more than happy to hear about it and support it.
I would think an easy way, because what's the difference between...
No, see, what I'm saying is there's a lot of different groups within the state alone working with a homeless population, working with previously released individuals from the prison system, working with any number of people who are kept away from IDs who want access to the state ID and cannot get it and have been working tirelessly to do so. And so I think part of it is that we're sort of minimizing the effect that an ID can have for people, but also how difficult it can be to work with state legislature, and that at the county level, this is really just the power that the county can hold jurisdictionally in order to provide a better context of living for its residents.
I don't disagree, but as I said, if it's elderly who can't get ID because they can't get to the Social Security, a county could help them get to the, Security.
Because of transportation, though. They might not have a picture ID, and you cannot have a state ID in the state without a picture ID.
Okay. So what about the fact that, all right, let me ask you one last question then. When it comes to these IDs, do banks have to use it? Is there anybody is the county going to force anybody to have to accept these IDs?
The county doesn't have that kind of power.
Okay. So the answer is no. There's nobody out there that the county would say you must accept this to cash a check, or so it possibly would help that person who needed the ability to cash his paycheck or not, because the state or the bank could say, we don't know that this is true.
But I think that's why the work that happened prior to us issuing the IDs is working with banking institutions to talk to them about this system of vetting people's identities, having them feel comfortable with it, and then allowing them to decide whether or not they want to utilize it. And we do have a banking institution that's willing to.
All right, I've run out of time. I do thank you very much, Tim, and again, Kalamazoo County Clerk Tim Snow and Professor Francisco Villegas, who is the chair of the ID Advisory Board concerning this. Thanks for coming on the Live with Renk show and answering those questions.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
You guys have a great day. Well, unfortunately, it was at the end of the show here, and I didn't have time, or we don't have time to take your phone calls. Certainly tomorrow morning, if you'd like to call in and discuss the issues or the interview, I would appreciate it. I certainly would like to hear your thoughts about it tomorrow. Or if you can't call in, you could certainly give us you can email me at Renk, RENK, at townsquaremedia.com. And again, I appreciate the Kalamazoo County Clerk Tim Snow and the Kalamazoo College Professor Francisco Villegas for coming on and taking what I hope was good and tough questions to get a better understanding of what they were trying to do. And What do you guys think?